Good day, viewers. My name is Mrs. Okpara Grace, and the subject we have now is social studies. The topic before us is communication. What is communication? Communication is gotten from a Latin word communis, which means to discuss or share ideas or information with one another. Therefore, communication is a process of passing information to and receiving information from other people. Process of communication. For communication to actually take place, there are several processes that has to be considered. The source of the communication is the first place that we look at in the process of communication, and then the encoding. Now, the source is the sender of the message. Then the next process we have to look at is the channel. What method is the communication going or coming using? Then we have the decoder, that's the person receiving the message, which is also the message and the receiver. Then there's also going to be a feedback, which may not be possible if there are barriers. So for us to have effective communication, the process must be followed holistically. The next one I want to look at is methods of communication. There are several methods of communication, which are the verbal or oral communication, to the non-verbal communication, and then we have the written communication. Let's take a closer look at each of them. The first one, the verbal or oral communication, is the use of language to pass information from one person to the other. That is, when you talk. As you can hear my voice now, I'm using the verbal or oral communication because you can hear me and you can understand the language I am using. The second method is the non-verbal communication. This involves the use of gestures, signals, facial expression, or other visual ways to pass information. You will agree with me that this method is commonly used at home, when a parent will be using maybe the eye contact or other part of the body to communicate with children, or the facial expression is also a good method of communication. And then we have the written communication. The written communication is a process of passing or receiving information by writing, maybe through letter writing or other means. Now I want to look at the means of communication. There are two major means of communication, which are the olden or traditional means of communication and then the modern means of communication. The olden or traditional means of communication is the oldest form of communication that has been in place even before the coming of the white men or the civilization of our nation. And this include the use of traditional drum, talking drum, gunpowder, town criers, burning bushes, and all that to pass messages. Then the modern communication are the ones that we're using now. That has to do with the telephone call, the radio messages, the television, the use of WhatsApp, email, and other communication means. We still have the postal system, the telegraph, the camera, the cell phone. All these are modern means of communication. You will agree with me that the modern means of communication has make life easier and also make communication faster. I did say before that there won't be feedback in the process of communication when there are barriers. Now, what are barriers? Barriers are things that bar or do not allow free flow of communication, that stops the message from getting clearly to the receiver or the encoder. Now, these are some of the barriers to communication. We have the time. If the time the message is coming is not at the right time, the receiver may not be able to get the message properly or may not understand the message. The language. If the language you're using is not the language that is well understood by the receiver, the message will not have the feedback. Then noise. Noise is a very common barrier to communication, even in classes, at home, all over. When there are noise, when you have noise, communication cannot have feedback or cannot really take place. We have distraction. When one is absent-minded, will not be able to get the message properly. Put downs, lack of interest, disability, discomfort, distance, too many questions, or other people. All this will not allow feedback or proper communication. So to have a proper communication, one must ensure that there are no barriers to communication. I hope you enjoyed the class today. Remember, we talked about communication, and we've also talked on the means of communication, the method of communication, and the process of communication, then the barriers to communication. Hope you enjoyed the class. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Till we see you again. Bye-bye. Stay safe.